On a quiet, moonlit night, the hospital's exterior buzzed with a rare calm. The emergency entrance, usually alive with hurried footsteps and flashing lights, stood still under the glow of a single street lamp. But there, nestled against the cold, unyielding pavement, lay something that didn't belong. A small, trembling puppy. Its fur was matted, a patchy blend of dirt and dampness, and its fragile frame shivered in the crisp night air. The puppy's big, glassy eyes were fixed on the hospital doors, unblinking, as if waiting for someone to emerge. Passers-by barely noticed it, too absorbed in their own lives to care about this tiny creature that seemed out of place yet utterly determined to stay. Why was it here? Who was it waiting for? A security guard approached, waving his flashlight. "Shoo! Go away," he muttered, his voice gruff yet softened by pity. But the puppy didn't move. Instead, it tucked itself deeper into the shadows, its gaze unwavering. Inside the hospital, Dr. Ethan Carter had just finished his third consecutive night shift. Exhausted, he glanced out of the window to catch a glimpse of the outside world before heading home. That's when he noticed it, the small, lonely figure curled up by the entrance. Something about the puppy's presence struck him as odd. It wasn't just the pitiful sight of a stray seeking shelter. It was the way it sat, motionless, as if waiting for something, or someone. Dr. Carter couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than met the eye. Little did he know, the story behind the puppy's nightly vigil would unravel a mystery so profound, it would leave him, and everyone else who heard it, in tears. Who was this puppy waiting for? And why did it choose this hospital? Stay with me, because this story will touch your heart in ways you never imagined. The hospital was more than just a building. It was a lifeline for the small community. Nestled in the heart of the town, it stood as a beacon of hope for those in need. From its bustling hallways to the quiet hum of life-saving machines, it was a place of contrasts, joy and heartbreak, beginnings and ends. Dr. Ethan Carter was one of its most respected physicians. Known for his calm demeanor and unwavering dedication, he had spent years pouring his heart into his work. But lately, the weight of the job had taken its toll. Sleepless nights, endless emergencies, and the emotional burden of patient struggles had left him feeling disconnected. The once vibrant passion that fueled his career was dimming. Ethan wasn't the only one feeling the strain. The hospital staff, a mix of seasoned professionals and eager newcomers, formed a close-knit community. Among them was Sarah, the compassionate nurse who always wore a smile despite the chaos, and Miguel, the cheerful janitor who knew everyone's name and had a knack for lightening the mood. Together, they worked tirelessly to make the hospital a haven. Outside the hospital, life in the town mirrored the struggles within. Times were tough. Businesses were closing, and families were grappling with uncertainty. Yet, amidst the challenges, there was a sense of unity. People supported one another, finding solace in small acts of kindness. It was against this backdrop that the mysterious puppy entered the scene. The first night the puppy appeared, no one paid much attention. Stray animals weren't uncommon in the area, but as the nights turned into weeks, its presence became impossible to ignore. Every evening, like clockwork, the puppy would take its place by the hospital's entrance. Some of the staff began to notice. Sarah mentioned it during a shift change. "Have you seen that little dog outside? It's there every night." Miguel chimed in. "Yeah, I tried to give it some food, but it wouldn't come near me. Just sits there, staring at the doors like it's waiting for someone." Ethan listened quietly, intrigued but preoccupied. His mind was too full of charts, diagnoses, and rounds to give it much thought. But then came the night when Ethan saw the puppy for himself. After a particularly grueling shift, he walked out to his car and spotted the tiny creature huddled in the corner. Its eyes met his for a fleeting moment, a mix of fear and hope that sent a pang through his chest. He paused, considering what to do. Should he approach it, call animal control, or simply walk away? He decided to leave, but as he drove home, he couldn't shake the image of the puppy's pleading gaze. One rainy evening, the town was enveloped in a steady downpour, the kind that seemed to wash away the noise of the world. The hospital's automatic doors hissed open and shut as patients and visitors hurried in and out, shielding themselves from the rain. Ethan was wrapping up his shift when Miguel burst into the staff lounge, his usually cheerful face clouded with concern. "Doc, you need to come see this," he urged. "What is it?" Ethan asked, alarmed. "The puppy. It's not moving." Miguel's words sent a jolt through Ethan. Without a second thought, he grabbed his coat and followed Miguel outside. There it was, the little dog, soaked to the bone, lying motionless near the entrance. Its tiny body looked even smaller under the weight of the rain, and its once bright eyes were now half closed, dulled by exhaustion. Ethan knelt beside the puppy, his doctor's instincts kicking in. Carefully, he checked for a pulse, relief washing over him when he felt the faint rhythm of a heartbeat. "It's alive," he murmured. "What do we do?" Miguel asked, his voice tinged with worry. Ethan hesitated. This wasn't his usual kind of patient, but he couldn't just leave the poor creature like this. "We'll bring it inside. It needs warmth and care." He scooped up the puppy, its frail body limp in his hands, and carried it into the hospital. As Ethan tended to the puppy in an unused examination room, his mind wandered. What had brought it here? It was clear the animal had been through hardship. Its ribs protruded under its thin fur, and there were small scars along its legs. Sarah peeked into the room. "Is that the dog that's always outside?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, it's in bad shape, but it'll pull through. I just don't get why it keeps coming here." "I heard someone say it's been here for weeks, every night," Sarah said, her voice soft. "Do you think it's waiting for someone?" Ethan shrugged, but deep down, he wondered the same. What could possibly drive this tiny creature to stay, night after night, in the face of hunger, cold, and rejection? The next day, Ethan returned to the hospital to check on the puppy. To his surprise, Miguel had fashioned a makeshift bed for it in the janitor's closet. The puppy was awake, its tail wagging faintly as Ethan entered. "You've got some fight in you," Ethan said, a small smile playing on his lips. As he examined the puppy, he noticed something he hadn't before, a worn leather collar hidden beneath its fur. It was old and cracked, but there was a name etched into the surface. "Max. Max," Ethan murmured, testing the name. The puppy's ears perked up at the sound, its eyes lighting up for the first time. Ethan's heart tightened. This wasn't just a stray, it was someone's pet. But whose? And why had they abandoned it? Sarah entered the room, carrying a small dish of food. "He looks better already," she said, setting the dish down. "I found a name on his collar," Ethan replied. "Max. We need to figure out where he came from." Sarah nodded. "I'll ask around. Someone in town must know something." As Ethan watched Max eat, a thought nagged at the back of his mind. There was something more to this story, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. He had no idea that the answer would soon come, and it would change everything. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Max's story was more than a simple case of an abandoned dog. The collar, the nightly visits to the hospital, it all pointed to a deeper connection. With Sarah's help, he decided to investigate. Sarah began asking around town. She spoke to shop owners, neighbors, and even the children playing in the park, showing them a photo of Max. Most people shook their heads, saying they didn't recognize the dog, but one elderly man paused. "That little guy looks familiar," he said, squinting at the photo. "I think I saw him with a young boy a few months ago. They used to pass by my shop every morning. Haven't seen them lately, though." "A boy?" Sarah asked, her curiosity piqued. "Yeah, a sweet kid. Always smiling. But then one day, they stopped coming. I figured they moved away or something." Sarah relayed the information to Ethan that evening. "A boy. Document Max might belong to him. But why isn't the boy coming anymore?" Ethan's mind raced. Could the boy be connected to the hospital? He decided to check the patient records, searching for any young boys who had been admitted in the past few months. After hours of combing through files, Ethan found a name: Lucas Bennett, 8 years old, admitted 3 months ago for a severe illness. The notes indicated a prolonged treatment, but there was something else. Lucas's family had stopped visiting shortly after he was admitted. Ethan felt a knot in his stomach. Was it possible that Max belonged to Lucas? And if so, why was Max outside while Lucas was inside? Ethan approached Sarah with the file. "I think I've found him," he said. "Lucas Bennett. He's a patient here, and he might be the reason Max keeps coming back." Sarah's eyes widened. But why wouldn't the family bring Max in with them? And why hasn't anyone mentioned this before? "That's what I'm going to find out," Ethan replied. The next day, Ethan visited Lucas's room. The boy was sitting up in bed, pale but smiling as he played with a worn stuffed animal. His dark hair was messy, and his eyes sparkled with a mixture of mischief and resilience. "Hi, Lucas," Ethan said, pulling up a chair. "I'm Dr. Carter. How are you feeling today?" Lucas shrugged. "Okay, I guess. I miss being outside." Ethan nodded, his heart aching for the boy. "I have a question for you. Do you have a dog named Max?" At the mention of Max's name, Lucas's face lit up. "You know Max?" he asked eagerly. "I think I do," Ethan replied, smiling. "He's been outside the hospital every night. Is he your dog?" Lucas nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "He's my best friend. We used to do everything together. But when I got sick, my parents said we couldn't keep him. They said it was too much with everything going on. I think they gave him away." Ethan's chest tightened as he listened. Max hadn't been abandoned. He had been separated from the person he loved most. And yet, against all odds, the loyal dog had found his way back to Lucas. Ethan promised Lucas that he would do everything he could to reunite him with Max, but it wasn't going to be easy. Hospital policies strictly prohibited animals from staying with patients, and Lucas's parents, still grappling with the weight of his illness, were hesitant. "They're just trying to do what's best," Sarah said when Ethan vented his frustrations. "But they don't see what we see, that Max is part of Lucas's healing." Ethan refused to give up. He reached out to hospital administrators, pleading Max's case. He pointed to studies showing the positive effects of animal companionship on recovery, hoping to convince them to make an exception. The administrators were reluctant. "This is a hospital, not a pet shelter," one of them said. "We can't just let a dog roam the halls." Ethan felt the sting of defeat, but he wasn't done fighting. He couldn't ignore the bond between Lucas and Max, or the way Max's nightly presence had already begun to touch everyone at the hospital. One night, as Ethan sat in the break room, Miguel walked in, holding his phone. "Doc, you need to see this," he said, grinning. Miguel had recorded a video of Max sitting outside the hospital, his eyes fixed on the doors. The clip was simple but powerful, capturing the raw devotion of the little dog waiting for his boy. "Post it," Ethan said without hesitation. Within days, the video went viral. Comments flooded in from around the world. People moved by Max's loyalty, demanding that Lucas and Max be reunited. The hospital administrators, overwhelmed by the public response, finally agreed to a trial arrangement. Max would be allowed to visit Lucas under strict supervision. When Ethan told Lucas the news, the boy's face lit up with pure joy. "Really? Max can come here?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Really?" Ethan said, smiling. Ethan stood by the doors, holding Max's leash. The little dog's tail wagged furiously, his entire body quivering with anticipation. It was as if he knew that, after weeks of waiting, he was about to see the person he loved most in the world. "Ready, Max?" Ethan asked, his voice soft. Max barked in response, pulling eagerly toward the doors. The group made their way to Lucas's room. Inside, the boy sat up in bed, his eyes glued to the door. His heart raced with anticipation, a mix of hope and disbelief that this moment was really happening. When the door opened and Max bounded into the room, Lucas let out a gasp. "Max!" he cried, his voice breaking. The dog leapt onto the bed, his small body wriggling with uncontrollable joy. Lucas wrapped his arms around Max, burying his face in the dog's fur as tears streamed down his cheeks. "I missed you so much," Lucas whispered, his voice trembling. The room was silent except for the sounds of Lucas's quiet sobs and Max's soft whines of happiness. Ethan and Sarah exchanged glances, their own eyes misty. For the first time in months, Lucas looked truly happy. His pale face was lit with a smile, his hands stroking Max's fur as if he never wanted to let go. As the days turned into weeks, Max became a regular visitor at the hospital. Under Ethan's watchful eye, the little dog spent hours by Lucas's side, bringing comfort and companionship to the boy during his treatments. Lucas's health began to improve. The doctors couldn't deny the impact Max was having, not just on Lucas, but on everyone who encountered him. The hospital staff found themselves smiling more, their spirits lifted by the sight of the loyal dog trotting through the halls. Even patients who had never met Max were inspired by his story. He became a symbol of hope, a reminder of the healing power of love and loyalty. One evening, as Ethan checked on Lucas, he noticed something different. The boy, who had once been frail and withdrawn, was now sitting up, laughing as Max nuzzled his hand. "You're doing better," Ethan said, smiling. Lucas nodded, his eyes bright. "It's because of Max. He makes everything better." But the story wasn't over. One night, Lucas's condition took a sudden turn for the worse. The boy developed a high fever, his body struggling against the illness that had plagued him for so long. Ethan and the medical team worked tirelessly, doing everything they could to stabilize him. Max, sensing something was wrong, refused to leave Lucas's side. He lay at the foot of the bed, his eyes fixed on the boy, as if willing him to fight. Hours passed, and finally, Lucas's fever began to break. Ethan let out a sigh of relief, his exhaustion giving way to gratitude. When Lucas woke, the first thing he saw was Max. The boy reached out, his fingers brushing against the dog's fur. "You stayed," he whispered. "Of course he did," Ethan said, smiling. "He's your best friend." Lucas's recovery was slow but steady. With Max by his side, he found the strength to face even the toughest days. The bond between the boy and his dog was unbreakable, a testament to the enduring power of love. Word of their story continued to spread, inspiring countless others. Letters and messages poured in from around the world, many sharing their own tales of loyalty and resilience. Through it all, Ethan watched with awe, reminded of why he had chosen this path in the first place. Max and Lucas had reignited something within him, a belief in the goodness of the world and the profound impact of human and canine connection. Months passed, and Lucas continued to improve, his strength growing every day. He was no longer the sickly, withdrawn boy who had once laid in a hospital bed, waiting for answers. Now, he was vibrant and full of life, his days filled with laughter, play, and of course, Max's constant companionship. The hospital had become a different place too. The staff found joy in small moments, like when Max would race down the hall, his tail wagging furiously, or when patients who were struggling with their own illnesses would find solace in the sight of the boy and his dog. Dr. Ethan Carter, who had once felt detached from his work, found himself reinvigorated. Watching the bond between Lucas and Max grow had reminded him of why he had chosen to be a doctor in the first place, to make a real difference in people's lives, to be part of something larger than himself. One afternoon, as Ethan sat in his office reflecting on the months that had passed, he received an unexpected visit from Lucas's parents. They had been distant for so long, caught up in their own grief and fear. But now, with their son's recovery in full swing, they were ready to reconnect. "I owe you an apology," Lucas's mother said, her voice thick with emotion. "We weren't there when Lucas needed us most, and we didn't understand how important Max was to him." Ethan smiled warmly, his heart light. "It's never too late to make things right," he said gently. Max had become more than just a pet. He was a symbol of hope, love, and loyalty. People from the town and beyond had heard about the puppy who had waited outside the hospital every night, and many had been touched by his story. The local animal shelter, inspired by Max's journey, decided to start a campaign for animal adoption, hoping to give other animals the same chance at love and companionship that Max had found. At a community gathering to celebrate Max's impact, Ethan was invited to speak. As he stood before a crowd of familiar faces, he glanced at Lucas, who was seated beside Max, both of them glowing with health and happiness. "This little dog has taught us all something," Ethan began, his voice steady but emotional. "He's taught us that no matter how dark the days get, there is always love waiting for us, sometimes in the most unexpected places. Max showed us the power of loyalty, the strength of hope, and the undeniable bond between a boy and his dog." Lucas's parents, standing proudly beside their son, nodded in agreement. "Max gave us back our son," Lucas's father said, his voice filled with gratitude. As the event wrapped up, Ethan stood outside the hospital, watching the sunset. It had been a long journey, one filled with moments of doubt, heartache, and incredible triumph. But in the end, Max had changed everything. He had brought healing not only to Lucas, but to an entire community. Ethan smiled to himself, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He wasn't just a doctor anymore. He was part of something far bigger. He was part of a story of love, loyalty, and the incredible power of animals to heal even the deepest wounds. Lucas and Max were inseparable now. They had a future ahead of them, a future that seemed brighter with every passing day. And in that future, there was no room for loneliness, no room for fear. Just love, just hope, just the bond between a boy and his dog. Life had settled into a joyful rhythm for Lucas and Max. The boy, once frail and confined to a hospital bed, was now healthy enough to return home. Though he still had checkups and treatments to complete, the hardest part of his journey seemed to be behind him. Max remained by his side through it all. Wherever Lucas went, Max followed, his tiny paws padding faithfully beside him as they explored the world together. Whether it was a short walk in the park, a quiet moment reading in the backyard, or just snuggling on the couch, their bond was stronger than ever. The community that had rallied around their story continued to support them. Neighbors often stopped by to check on Lucas, bringing treats for Max and asking for updates on how the pair were doing. Ethan found himself reflecting on the impact Max and Lucas had left on his life. Though he had always been dedicated to his work, he now saw his role as more than just treating illnesses. He had learned to appreciate the human and canine connections that could truly make a difference in someone's recovery. One evening, as he walked through the now familiar halls of the hospital, Ethan paused near the entrance where Max had waited so many nights. The spot had become a symbol of loyalty and hope, a reminder of how far they had all come. Sarah joined him, carrying a clipboard but wearing a warm smile. "Thinking about Max again?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "It's hard not to. That little dog changed so many lives, including mine." Sarah laughed softly. "He really did. It's funny, isn't it? How one small act of loyalty can ripple out and touch so many people." Lucas and Max's story became more than just a tale of a boy and his dog. It became a symbol of what was possible when love, resilience, and kindness were allowed to flourish. People who had heard the story from afar began to reach out, sharing their own experiences of loyalty and hope. Schools invited Lucas to speak about his journey, and Max became a local celebrity, known as the dog who never gave up. At one event, Lucas stood on stage with Max at his side, addressing a crowd of eager listeners. "Max taught me that love never gives up," Lucas said, his voice clear and confident. "Even when things were hard, even when it seemed like there was no hope, Max believed in me, and that made me believe in myself." The audience erupted into applause, many wiping tears from their eyes. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lucas sat on his front porch with Max curled up at his feet. The boy ran his fingers through the dog's soft fur, his heart full of gratitude. "Thanks for never giving up on me," Lucas whispered. Max wagged his tail, as if to say, "I'll always be here." From a distance, Ethan watched them, his heart swelling with pride and peace. He knew that Max and Lucas's story would live on, not just in their small town, but in the hearts of everyone who had been touched by their journey. Because sometimes, all it takes is one act of loyalty, one dog's unwavering love, to remind us of what truly matters. And in that reminder, there is hope. In the quiet corners of life, where love waits patiently and loyalty stands unwavering, we find the truest kind of healing. As the story of Max and Lucas spread, it became a symbol of resilience, loyalty, and the healing power of love. Their journey reminded everyone who heard it that no matter how difficult life might seem, love and connection could help overcome even the greatest challenges. Max's nightly vigil outside the hospital was no longer just the story of a loyal dog. It was a testament to the lengths we go for those we care about. He wasn't waiting just for Lucas. He was showing the world what it meant to never give up on someone you love. Back in the hospital, the staff carried the spirit of Max and Lucas's story in their hearts. Patients who had been inspired by their bond began opening up to their own families, reconnecting with loved ones they had lost touch with. Ethan, reinvigorated by the experience, started an initiative to bring therapy animals to the hospital. The program was named Max's Mission, in honor of the little dog who had changed so many lives. Lucas and Max returned home, where their bond only grew stronger. Lucas regained his strength, running through fields with Max at his side, their laughter echoing in the air. Max, now a local hero, seemed to sense the happiness he had brought into Lucas's life and the world around them. For Ethan, the memory of Max and Lucas served as a guiding light. Whenever he faced a challenging case or a moment of doubt, he thought of the little dog who refused to give up, and the boy who found the strength to keep fighting. The story of Max and Lucas is a reminder that love transcends all barriers. It teaches us to be patient, to be kind, and to never underestimate the power of showing up for those we care about. So the next time you see a stray dog, a struggling friend, or someone waiting in hope, remember Max's unwavering loyalty. Sometimes, all it takes to change a life is to simply be there. And with that, we leave you with this thought. Who in your life might need you to be their Max? Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. Remember to hold your loved ones close and cherish every moment.